excited to introduce you to the newest family member and share the birth story of Miriam. The kids wanted, or my son insisted on this bow. He wanted her to wear an outfit and put a bow on her. Oh my goodness. If you followed along for a while, you might know that this is our first girl in nearly 15 years. So my youngest daughter will be 15 this fall. So all my sons have never seen a baby sister, and it's exciting. But she probably won't be wearing a bow all the time. We just put one on her for the first time today. So she is currently 3 days old. I always like to share these birth stories pretty close to the birth so I don't forget any of the details. Already I was replaying it and I was like, wait, is that the detail I know? So hopefully I get it all right. I have been sharing on this channel since 2017, and there's been a birth story every other year since then. Now, there won't be very many more. I turned 40 this year, but this is the 2025 version. If you're looking for positive home birth stories, I have a whole bunch of them because this is our 6th home birth, and the one before that, we were going to a birthing center, and I had the baby almost at home, but in the car. So almost 7th home birth. 2 of those unassisted by accident. One of them is Miriam's. And then I had my first 2 at the hospital. So I have quite a collection of natural birth stories at this point. And I'm super thankful. They've been very uncomplicated, including Miriam's. Before I dive into the home birth story of our 9th baby, I want to tell you about something that we love in our home to stock our pantry with goods to make foods from scratch. I added a few things onto my order this time to make postpartum a bit easier. Things like bone broth and snacks so that my family can make easy soups, they could have easy snacks, sourdough pasta, diced tomatoes to easily throw together a chili mac with some grass-fed ground beef. I love getting spices on Thrive Market and condiments. I especially love the Thrive Market brand because it's for such a great price, but high quality and organic ingredients. I have been shopping Thrive Market for so many years, and it's super convenient. On the Thrive Market website, they let you sort by dietary preference. So if you are paleo, gluten-free, dairy-free, you can make it to where you only see those options. So it's very streamlined, very easy. The box comes right to your door. Orders over $49 ship for free. So it takes out that extra step of going to the grocery store for busy moms, which I appreciate at all times, but especially right now. Thrive Market allows you to shop high quality groceries without the premium price tag. They do the heavy lifting for you by restricting over 1,000 questionable ingredients from all the products they carry on site. And they have new deals every day on top brands like Chomps, Poppy, Siete, Lesser Evil, and more. If you don't make back your annual membership fee and savings, Thrive Market will credit you the difference. Thrive Market is offering Farmhouse on Boone viewers 30% off your first order and a free gift when you join Thrive Market today. You can use my link, thrivemarket.com/Farmhouse on Boone. Of course, I will also leave it linked down in the description box below. Again, thank you Thrive Market for sponsoring today's video. Her birth story is identical nearly to Victor's. So Victor is our 8th baby. I shared his birth story in July of 2023, and I was praying to have a birth story just like Victor's because he went on record as the easiest labor and delivery that I've had so far. Now, all of my births have been fairly uncomplicated. We have had some position issues that have caused prodromal labor, and that is the case for the last 2 babies. Now, would I want prodromal labor going into it? I guess not. However, the 2 babies that I had prodromal labor with, this one and Victor, ended up having the active phase of labor go very, very quickly. Another thing to note with this little one is she was my earliest baby at 3 days before the due date. So I've never had a baby that early. I wasn't exactly surprised because I started having prodromal labor about 3 days before having her. So on around, I think 39 weeks and 1 day, overnight, I started having real contractions, not Braxton Hicks. I can tell they're real if they radiate around my back and they're not just right in front, a very tight uterus. I can also tell by the intensity of them. Braxton Hicks don't cause me to pause or stop a conversation. I have those, and most people do, throughout pregnancy and throughout the 3rd trimester. But real contractions, there's a noticeable shift in how they feel, and it probably takes having a few, or not a few babies, but probably takes having labor for you to recognize the difference. I know a lot of times first-time moms can confuse more intense Braxton Hicks with prodromal labor, but there's a difference, and it's not super clear, but it's kind of subtle, but it is obvious. So when I started having those contractions overnight at 39 weeks and 1 day, I assumed it was prodromal labor because I experienced that with Victor. So I wasn't thinking, oh, this is it, we're having the baby tonight. I was like, oh great, we're doing prodromal labor again, which again, I kind of like because it makes the active part of labor really short, but it's also frustrating because with Miriam, it happened, and Victor, it happened 3 or 4 nights in a row. You're so wide awake. And that didn't allow me to get the most sleep because I would wake up every time. So second night it happened again. I think I slept a little bit better that night because I wasn't thinking about timing them or anything. I was just like, this is definitely prodromal labor. Now the 3rd night, there was a noticeable shift in their consistency and intensity. They were exactly 30 minutes apart, starting around 10 p.m. all the way until the next day, which 30 minutes apart seems like kind of an odd spacing for regular contractions, but they were to the minute 30 minutes apart. So even that level of consistency, even though you think, what can 30 minutes apart do, made me clued into the fact that it was going to lead to labor, or I at least expected it to. Let me back up 1 day. So the day before that was Friday, and my sisters and I took the kids to an apple orchard that was around an hour away. And I had had contractions the night before. They weren't the 30 minutes apart ones, but they were pretty regular and they were pretty strong. And I was still having some in the morning. And I had one on the way to the apple orchard. And my 16-year-old daughter was like, I don't know if I'm gonna go with you guys to the orchard today. And I was like, you're gonna go, because if I get in a bind and something, starts to take off here, I'm gonna need you to drive me home. But nothing happened. I had a few contractions at the apple orchard, but they mostly fizzled out until 10 p.m. So for the record, Friday is the day before I had her. So Friday night is when they started at 10 p.m. and they started going 30 minutes apart all the way until the next day. So Victor's was the exact same, where the night before I actually ended up having him, there was a shift in their consistency and intensity. And then with both babies, Saturday morning, which Victor wasn't born on a Saturday, but for Miriam, Saturday morning, they completely stopped. Same with Victor. So you might remember I did a homemaking in labor video with Victor. And the reason for that is when they stopped that morning, it was a Tuesday. I was very frustrated that my labor stopped, and I thought a good distraction would be to just film a video, do some homemaking, not really knowing that I was going to end up having him that afternoon. So that video happened very accidentally with Miriam. I had no intention of filming a video on that day, because after already kind of going through this whole prodromal labor thing with my last baby and seeing how it turned out, I was more confident that I was going to be having the baby that day, so I wasn't going to film a video when I knew for sure that I was having a baby that day. I was going to do a little bit more relaxing, and also it was a Saturday, so I never do any kind of filming on a Saturday. In the morning, they completely stopped. I did let my midwife know that the night before I'd had these regular but only 30 minutes apart contractions. Thought it was pertinent information because she lives about an hour away, and so just letting her know that at any time it could shift, and with the way that my labors have been in the past, that shift could take a turn very quickly. So letting her know, like, hey, at any point today, you might want to drop what you're doing and head this way. Since I'd had 3 nights of prodromal labor already, I was pretty tired, and I told my sister, I'm gonna do things. Like, I'm not just gonna let this keep happening. Not that you can always do things. Sometimes you can take action and still your body won't kick it up into labor. But the thing that I do with prodromal labor is the mile circuit. And the reason for that is a lot of times the reason you're experiencing prodromal labor is the baby isn't in the proper position to really push down on the cervix and get the labor going to the level that would actually result in birth. So I did the mile circuit, which takes about an hour and a half. This is where there's 3 positions and each position is 30 minutes. So the first 2 positions are basically creating space in your pelvis so that the baby can kind of wriggle around and get into the proper position for birth. And then the last step is more of an action. So it's curb walking, stair walking, lunges. Once you create that space, then giving the baby a chance to get back down into position, but in the proper way. So whether or not this was the catalyst for the labor, I can't 100% say, because things were definitely already moving by the fact that they had been consistent, even though only 30 minutes apart, which when you've had a lot of babies, you can't take the advice of the standard 5-5-1 or 5-1-1 rule. So the 5-1-1 rule is contractions 5 minutes apart for 1 minute in duration for 1 full hour. And a lot of times they tell you not to go to the hospital, not to call the midwife until you get there. But you can throw that advice out the window if you've had, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 plus children. Those 30-minute apart contractions, I find, sorry, it's a little loud here because we're way out of our usual schedule. So I'm just sitting here filming when it's not nap time. But that's okay. Just so you know, the toddler is in safe hands. He just is a toddler, so he's probably throwing a fit about something. From my past experience, it is obvious that those 30-minute apart contractions actually are doing a lot of dilating. So those 3 or 4 nights of prodromal labor leading up to labor, I've never gotten checked to see dilation, but I suspect that when I go into the active part of labor, it's already, like, I must already be really far in dilation because of how fast it goes. And this happened to me with the 3 babies now that I've done the mile circuit with, that we seem to have had positioning issues with, that had some prodromal labor associated with it. Their active part of labor, once it shifted, it went fast. So I know that those 30-minute apart contractions actually do things, and I think that's more typical when you've had a lot of babies. So a lot of times for a first-time mom, all those are doing is maybe getting your cervix ready and effacement and all that kind of stuff. But if you are a mom of many, don't necessarily take the advice you read on the internet, because it will tell you that those do nothing, that it's false labor, and it is absolutely not. And I know now, actually I've known for a while, after several babies, to take those seriously and to know that labor could really take off quickly after that. Most of the morning on Saturday, my contractions just weren't picking up, but I was still having them, probably on average about 30 minutes. I stopped timing them because I was just around the house with the kids and I wasn't just laying in bed thinking about them. I know that they kept happening, but it wasn't something that was consistent enough to make me say, oh, this is absolutely it. Luke has been painting a ton right now out at the farm because we're doing wood everything, wood trim, wood siding. We're wanting to do linseed oil paint, so we have to prime like all sides of everything. So we didn't want him to waste that day, because what happens is then our builder can't move forward Monday morning because the materials would not be primed and ready. He went out to the farm and he took 4 of the kids with him, and he knew what was going on. I told him at any time, like, this could shift and I will let you know. Normally on Saturdays we will go to the farmer's market or we'll go thrifting. And my oldest 2 daughters were kind of thinking that, and I was like, hey, I think we need to hang here and I need your help with the little boys. So they were home to help me with the 2 little boys, and then Luke had the 4 boys out at the farm. So we hung outside. It was a really nice day, like fall weather, even though it's still technically summer and we have lots of like 90-degree days in the forecast. That day was like 70 and breezy. I was a little frustrated, of course, because like 3 nights in a row of being mostly up with contractions, but at least the weather was really nice. So we played outside a ton. I had several little moments where I'd have a contraction and I just would lay down on the ground. I had to relax through them. I couldn't just walk and do whatever. So around 1, the big girls decided to take the little boys on a walk, and I told them I'm just gonna go take a nap. I need to rest because if this baby doesn't come today and I have prodromal labor again for another night, I need to at least use this afternoon to get a little bit of sleep. So I came up to my room. I think I fell asleep for about maybe 30-45 minutes, but then I woke up to a contraction that felt pressure with it, like quite a bit. But it's funny because I had not had a contraction for 30 minutes. Again, I actually started recording them because I was like, I feel like they're maybe getting stronger. So I had one at 1:15 and then I recorded one at 1:45. And so 30 minutes, and I slept those 30 minutes. And then I texted her at 1:46 and I said, things may be picking up a bit. She put, oh yeah? And I said, seems like it. And then she said, what's going on? I said, well, they started coming a little closer and my water may be leaking, because it wasn't like a full-on bust. I'm used to when the water breaks, it's very obvious. But this was like I had some pressure with the contraction, so it felt like I pushed a little bit. So she said it may just be the 4 bag. Do you think we should head there? And I said, I've never heard of that, the 4 bag. But then I Googled it and I was like, yeah, that seems like what it was. And I put probably so, I don't know for sure, but if my water did break, it'll pick up. How far apart are the contractions? And I said, some are still far apart, but sometimes 10 minutes. Well, right after this text, they got 3 minutes apart for the rest of the labor. So it was just like I expected, a very, very quick shift. And I just kind of figured that was what was going to happen because it's what happened with my last prodromal labor baby. You getting a little fussy? It went from just like a lot of contractions, but really far apart for a long time, to then like, boom, you're having this child. She said this may be the change we're waiting for, sometimes in a grand multip. So that's somebody who's had a lot of children. They don't get much closer than 10 till the end. I'm going to head there in a second. I put, okay, sounds good. I'll wait to walk around and get them really going faster until you're here. Then she put, sounds good, ETA 250. And then there's no more text between us because the next interaction with her is Luke calling her. So let me back up a little bit. The same time I texted the midwife, I texted Luke at 1:54 and I said, I asked the midwife to come. I'm still not 100% sure, but I feel like it's picking up a bit. Luke knows me well enough to know if I say anything like that he should hurry. So that wasn't like a super certain text at all. It was like, yeah, maybe. But guess what? He came quick. He knows. I'm saying that as if like I knew. I really didn't. But there's this subconscious kind of instinct thing where you're like, yeah, something shifted. And if I know to call the midwife, it usually always is right. Like I've never, and not saying that that can't happen, but the more babies I've had, when I call the midwife, Luke knows the baby is coming very soon, even if I'm not sure that that's the case. So thankfully, because Luke was a lot closer than the midwife, he arrived in time. So he arrived, and when he walked through our bedroom door, I said, the midwife's not going to make it. And he's like, what? I'm like, well, can tell you that this is progressing very, very quickly. I can just feel it. Like she's right here. So I said, just get her on the phone, because that was our plan. We had a meeting with the midwife the Thursday before having her, where she went over what to do if the cords are on the neck, if we needed to stimulate the baby to cry. It wasn't like I was planning an unassisted birth, but I knew that if it was like my last baby, if this happened where there was a sudden shift in labor, there just wasn't going to be anything I could do. If I've already been having contractions 30 minutes apart for probably 24 hours, or, you know, maybe 18 hours, something like that. There wasn't any time in that would indicate it was time to call her until it was too late, because there wasn't a shift until an hour before, or 45 minutes before I had her. So if you're thinking, well, why don't you just call sooner? There was no indication I should call. They were 30 minutes apart all the way until they weren't. And the moment they weren't, I let her know, because I know better. So he called her and she said, okay, lay on your side and blow. And that's just what we're gonna do to try to avoid pushing her out. And so I did that, and I made it through 2 contractions like that, and then I just told Luke, I'm giving up. I cannot do this. Like, trying to not push when you need to push and the baby is right there is just so hard. And if I was convinced that, you know, something bad was going to happen, like if there was going to be some kind of complication that we knew about, I would have maybe tried harder. But I knew she was going to also be there very soon. She was only about 5 minutes out. So I'm like, what's the worst that can happen at this point? I mean, it just, when you're in that moment of needing to push and your body is just like going to do it no matter what you do, holding it for 2 contractions it was very difficult. And I probably, if my life depended on it, could have made more, but I decided to give up and ended up pushing her out literally in 1 push after that. And thankfully, there was no cord around the neck, so we didn't have to do any of the things that she brought a little baby with her, and she showed us like exactly what you would do, but we didn't really want it. Like, Luke didn't really want that responsibility. So thankfully she came out extremely easy, no cord around the neck. She cried instantly. Luke's like, she cried before she was even out. Like, her mouth, like as it was coming out, was screaming. Thankfully, there was no scares whatsoever. And then my midwife was able to make it in time for all the after stuff. So making sure that the placenta comes out in its entirety, making sure that I'm not bleeding too much, but everything was perfect. She was 7 pounds, 8 ounces. So this is my 3rd smallest baby, which the only other 2 that were smaller than her were the other 2 girls. I don't really think it's gender related. I think it's more that she was born 3 days before her due date. And then a lot of the other babies, I think they get a little bit bigger as you get older. So my boys all came later than the girls. So they were all around 8.5 pounds. But then this one, I know it was only 3 days early, but most of mine come a few days after. So, you know, about a week later than her. Nonetheless, perfect size, perfect birth. Everything just went so well, and we think she's absolutely precious. Even when you know things are picking up, it's still so surprising when you're pushing. You're like, wait, I'm done. Like, I got to a 10. But most of that getting to a 10 was spread out over a lot of days. It did cause a little bit of anxiety because I will say in past pregnancies, I don't worry about going places an hour away when it's my due date. People are like, what are you doing here? I'm like, well, I'm not in labor, so I'm not worried about it. But because of that prodromal labor, I questioned if I should go with my sisters to the apple orchard. I was nervous while I was there because if it had done that, I would have been too far away from the house to make it back, and I would have had a baby in the car trying to make it to my home birth. So I don't like that aspect of it because you kind of feel like you shouldn't really go anywhere, but then if you end up not having the baby, you're like, well, why didn't I go do that fun fall day at the apple orchard? So it's a little bit of a mind game. Once you've experienced it a few times, it's a little less of a mind game because you kind of just know like what's happening, that it's not the day you're having the baby. But it can be confusing and it can cause you to have unassisted births that you don't plan on having unassisted. But there was never any point that felt scary. It just went so well. I am so thankful I have extremely uncomplicated labors and deliveries. There's been some position things, but just nothing compared to a lot of the birth stories that I read and see and hear. They've all just been very uncomplicated. So I can only just say I'm thankful. We are super happy to have our new little girl. I have had very bad afterbirth cramps or pains or contractions or whatever you want to call it, which I always do, but this kind of flowed right after the whole prodromal labor thing. And so I was telling Luke today that I feel like I've been in labor overnight for 6 or 7 nights now. Now, historically, they end up tapering off sometime around 3 or 4 days. So I should be on the tail end of it. Forgot to mention something. When I came up to my room and they started being three minutes apart, and so I was really having them, you know, just kind of very on top of each other, I got that hypnobirthing app, that Christian hypnobirthing app that I also got with Victor. Love that thing. So I've always been a huge fan of the Bradley method. It's where you get yourself into this deeply relaxed state. Works amazingly. Like the last 3 labors, I've even relaxed straight on through transition. Like no moment of panic or dread or fear, no like screaming, literally just laying there like I'm asleep all through because of the Bradley method, because I get myself so deeply relaxed during that very intense part of labor. But then to add on the Christian hypnobirthing, it has scriptures and it has affirmations. I put an earbud in my ear and I play that through, and I feel so deeply relaxed when pairing the Bradley Method position with the Christian hypnobirthing tracks. I highly recommend it. The last 2 births, I just bought it for 1 month and then canceled it. There's things you can do to prep all through pregnancy, so I would say it's probably a cool app to have throughout pregnancy, but I am so well acquainted with labor at this point that I can just slip into that relaxation state without practice, without having to prepare. That wasn't the case for my first several natural births, but now, like, I didn't even think about labor. I didn't have any anxiety about it. I just didn't. We're so busy with the house build and stuff that I didn't even have any moments where I was even thinking about it until it started. But still, it comes back like riding a bike, like slipping into that Bradley position and then adding on the Christian hypnobirthing tracks. Highly recommended. I feel like I was basically like asleep during even transition. I felt it very intense, so you can go back and listen to Victor's birth story. It was almost the exact same. Intense, but not unmanageable, and not feeling like I need to escape and run away, which in my last several labors before that, I think the first one I was able to relax through transition was my 7th baby. And the ones leading up to that, there's always that point in labor where I'm like jumping off the bed where I'm like, okay, I relaxed enough and now I can't take it anymore. But the last 3, that didn't happen. And I do think the Christian hypnobirthing app helped a ton with getting me so deeply relaxed that even the transition contractions felt manageable. And then once you're in the pushing phase, it's more of an active thing, not so much of a relaxation thing. So things get a little bit more intense, I guess, during that part. But being able to get through transition, if you've ever had a natural birth, you know that is like something to try for, because that's the hardest part usually to relax through. Like, you almost can't do it. If you want to hear more about the Bradley Method and all of my natural birthing stories, just search on YouTube Farmhouse Home Boom Birth Story. There's a ton of them. I will say that my 7th, 8th, and 9th were the ones that I was finally able to figure out how to relax through transition. And of course, I'm always happy to be on the other side of it. I'm always happy when the nursing relationship feels pretty established, which we're definitely getting there. And when I'm past those postpartum cramps and contractions, I'm like, all right, I'm so glad to be past all of this. Well, thank you all so much for always loving these birth stories and your support and love for our family. We're super happy to introduce you to little Miriam. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.